Well, I saw this. Homelessness in America increases to its highest number recorded, and the numbers are absolutely shocking. $3.1 billion has been spent on homeless, according to HUD. Seattle has adopted this policy, which is housing first. So you take somebody who's sick with drugs and mental illness and get them a house. And I read the entire piece and the study that was done and the numbers coming in from the Discovery Institute. I got to get this guy on. Dr. Robert Marbut, thank you very much for coming on with us. I read through the study, and there's just a whole bunch here to talk about. Obviously, in 2015, when the city of Seattle said, we are going, this is it. It's an emergency. We're going all in on this homeless stuff. And the numbers go up every single year. Every single year they continue to increase. I think according to the Discovery Institute and the work that you did, Doctor, shows that within 4 years, I think the number will double. Is that correct?
Yes, we're at a rate now, we're doubling, and in Seattle, you're going to double in a rate of basically 3 years. And there are a lot of reasons why, but the most important is you all doubled down on what the federal government was doing, which has not worked. And and I could go through all sorts of numbers and prove it, but in Seattle, the great thing is just look out your window. Are things better or worse than they were last year or 4 years ago?
I use this analogy, Doctor. You can disagree with me. It's okay if you don't like it. If somebody had cancer, right, and it is racking their body, rather than just putting them in the hospital, you have to put them in the hospital and give them chemo. You have to use some type of medical intervention to stop the cancer. You can't just stick them in a hospital bed. It seems to me in Seattle, we just take somebody and we just want to put them in a house. But we're not.
You use a medical one very similar to me. The one I use is, and I hope you don't have a heart attack, but if you were suddenly having a heart attack, we call 911.
Right.
We pick you up, we transport you, and all we do is drop you in the receiving room, the reception area. You never see a doc, never get tests, never put an EKG on you, never get any meds, don't do any surgery, but we just keep you in the waiting room. But you have a roof over your head, and therefore you're going to get better. Whether it's chemo example or the heart attack, you don't get better. You only get better when you go through treatment. And in a homelessness sake, the idea of giving you a free everything, free house, free everything, and you don't go through treatment or recovery is mind-boggling at a clinical level. But at a policy level, think about a Pell Grant in a college environment.
Yeah.
We give you 6, 7, 8,000 every other semester, 12,000, 14, 15,000 a year. But we require you to go to class. We require you to have a GPA of a C minus or better. We require you to finish in a certain period of time. But in terms of homelessness, we don't have any of those requirements, and you don't have to be involved in a program, but we're just going to give you free taxpayer support. And so it doesn't make sense on a clinical level, and it doesn't make sense on a policy level.
So I've looked at the numbers and studies 2018, point to point. They do calculation. I think they stopped doing it as the last data I got. Here are some of the numbers that you refute and you don't take as gospel. When they were asking the people that were coming through this and being filtered through in order to gain some sort of data, I think it was under 20% said they had drug or alcohol problems. And then they also came up with a number that a small portion of the people were from somewhere else. The majority were from King County or from Seattle. The Discovery Institute went through. I don't know how you gained. I wasn't able to see how you did this. You said, no, those numbers are not right. Let's just talk about people that are coming from other places. What is the percentage of people coming from other places other than Seattle or King County?
Well, for you, and the number they get to on 20%, here's their question they ask. They ask, the night before we're interviewing you right now, or the night before you entered this place, where were you? And so if you were coming into the Greyhound station or hitchhiking in or training in or came in by a friend, you were already in Seattle. So when you ask that question that way, you're going to, it's an artifact of the question. The way we ask it is, where did you go to high school? Were you born in Seattle? Do you have family living or dead here? Did you have a medical bill or a utility bill or an apartment rental or a house title 2 years ago? So we're asking real questions of where you're from, not where you were the night before we ask you a question for a HUD survey. And so they ask it in a very purposeful way to make the number really low rather than a logical way. That's why it's different.
Now, why do you think that they do that?
Because they want to be able to say we can help everybody. And I actually think, again, it's not only a waste of policy money, I think it's clinically wrong. We know from therapeutic research for the last 30 or 40 years that people recover around family better, unless it's a domestic violence situation. And that's a very important exception, but it's a small percent. But let's take away domestic violence. You recover around your family and a common community, a community you know, way better than you do in a community you don't know anything about, you don't know friends there. So again, at a clinical level, we've missed the mark. At a policy level, we missed the mark. And you all are about 10,000 people on the street now in Seattle. And the way it's going, Seattle and King County, and the rate you are going, not a Robert Marbut guess or a Discovery Institute guess, just the rate we know you're going is going to double in just about 3 years.
And how much of those numbers doubling, how many of those people are coming to Seattle and King County from some other place?
Any way you look at it, majority of your people is from somewhere else. Any mathematical, any of your sub-data, any of the breakout data, well over half come from outside of Seattle.
Why?
Or King County.
Why, Robert?
And it's because you all advertise you do free goodies and you don't have any requirements for people. The homelessness community, everybody has a cell phone. On the street, they're called Obama phones because under the Obama administration, they set up a program so everybody can get a cell phone. So they communicate very well. So the word gets out, come to Seattle. They give you all this goodie stuff. You don't have any requirements. You don't have to work to get out of homelessness, and you can stay there and be just nice and comfortable right there. And so it's you're setting yourself up for failure, not you, but the community of King County and Seattle. And I personally think that the Seattle City Council is starting to move the right way and starting to ask the right questions and maybe moving slower than I would. Mm-hmm. Whereas I think King County, is just really lost. Some of the talks and speeches and meetings I watch by the internet, I go, boy, they're just missing the mark.
Well, here's an example of maybe some of that. This is now, he's the outgoing King County Executive Dal Constantine. When they were talking to him about homelessness and the crisis, he says it's a housing problem. Then he said,
one widely held belief is that behavioral health issues like untreated mental health or substance use disorders are root causes of the homelessness crisis that we see all around us. This is wrong. This approach works.
So he's saying, and others have said as well, this is a Seattle Library employee proclaiming that it's a housing problem.
Homelessness is a housing problem. It's not a poverty problem. It's not a drug problem. It's not a mental health problem. It really is a housing problem.
So, Dr. Robert Marbut, what do you say? Are drugs and alcohol included in this? When a survey was done, only, I think, 20% said yes, they have drug or alcohol problem. 80% say they don't. What did the study that you have there at the Discovery Institute find?
So the way they do it is they go up to you, often with the police officer nearby as part of this, they call it a point in time, and they go, do you have a mental health problem? Are you an addict, and do you take illegal drugs? That's not the way you ask a proper survey question because it's a self-report.
Right.
The biggest study ever done And by the way, not a right-wing institute, not even a middle institute. It's California, Berkeley, and UCLA have a joint research arm called Cal Policy Lab. And what they found in the biggest mathematical study ever about homeless, 75% have untreated mental illness, 75% have co-presenting substance use disorder. And what's fascinating in this report, when they go and read the charts, so they're not asking you to self-report or tell me what it is. And when they go into it, they found that 50% causality of why they became homeless was directly tied to substance use disorders. And so that's the biggest study. It's an independent study, and it's a thorough study. And so they say 3/4 have this problem. Half say it directly caused their experiencing homelessness. And so these people who make these speeches just aren't looking at the data. And then the other thing, I've asked every elected appointed person I've ever been in Seattle, King County, I've always asked them, tell you what, if you can give me 2 hours and let's go out on the street and walk around your community and let's start talking to these people experiencing homelessness, and you tell me it's a housing problem, you tell me it's a financial problem. It's not. It's a behavioral health, mental health, and a substance abuse issue.
Okay, so in the
full stop period, and they're unwilling to go out. I mean, if they'd be willing to go out with me, meet the people, and then they say, well, I have a different interpretation. I don't know what you do at that point. But they're unwilling to even find out the facts because that would be inconvenient to their point of view, and it would mean they would have to change what they're doing.
So their point of view seems to be, we need to just build a whole bunch of houses. We need to create a whole bunch of homes. So the Discovery Institute goes through a 5-point action plan. If you can just hit some of the highlights that you think, if all of a sudden you had that magic wand, and I do agree with you that the city council is coming around to some more rational thought, what are some of the things that Seattle needs to start doing immediately as opposed to just build houses and put people in boxes where they can overdose and die in their own filth?
That's really the million-dollar question, because that's really what we should be focusing on. And that's what the King County should be focusing on and Seattle City Council. And there are 2 or 3 things you need to do right out of the box. One is start focusing on treatment and recovery rather than enabling drug use and giving free things away. So one is focus on real live treatment of root cause. The next one, and I know this is controversial, is to say everybody from out of town that comes into Seattle because they're coming in for the goodies is say, we're not going to welcome you here in Seattle. We are not going to treat you like a person. We're going to treat you on the proper clinical track, which is we know you have a better chance of recovering out of homelessness wherever your back home is, and we'll help you get back there, and we'll help get you to a good treatment program there. But we're not going to welcome you here and make you a local. We're going to send you to your best chance of recovery, which, by the way, is not Seattle. Again, domestic violence being a small, and it's a very small percent, but you got to make an exception for domestic violence. But for everybody else, why would you take somebody who comes from Pine Bluff, Arkansas, and give them all these services, and by the way, dilute your ability to help the local residents who are homegrown and experiencing homelessness? Why would you sort of take an out-of-towner and make them an in-towner when it doesn't help them at a clinical level?
Yeah, I'd seen one particular professor at University of Washington had written a book, and he was talking about, well, poverty doesn't create homelessness. And he says, well, look at the poverty levels very, very high in West Virginia, but they don't have a lot of homelessness there. So then I looked to see how much funding in West Virginia, in its biggest city there, actually supports homeless projects. They don't fund much of it. So if you're in West Virginia and you are homeless or about to be homeless, you will travel somewhere to get the things you want. And what you want, unfortunately, for these people whose lives are so twisted and demented with the illness of these addictions, will go to where they can go, which is Seattle. So then we see those numbers keep going up. I never thought that these were homegrown individuals. I saw, and it seems to flesh out in the Discovery Institute's work and the work that you did, Robert, that these people are coming here because Seattle is supporting a degenerate lifestyle that has trapped that individual, and it takes more money from the taxpayers to support this life.
Exactly. And one thing we talk a little deeper that we haven't covered yet in our visit today is Seattle, as well as Portland and San Francisco and LA and other West Coast cities, have taken the idea we're either going to decriminalize hard drugs, or if it's going to stay on the book, we're not going to prosecute it. So you're functionally legalizing drugs. And so when you have a behavioral mental health problem and you're already self-medicating on the street, and you put out the message that we're not going to criminalize any of it, and in fact, many programs say we're going to provide harm reduction, quote unquote, and we're going to help you do your drug use. And we're going to create websites that tell you how to do drugs and not tell you how to get treatment. You only exacerbate the problem by having this very loose drug culture on the street.
Well, let's hope, for the sake of those that are suffering on the streets of Seattle, that the city council reads and talks to you and takes you up on your offer to go out and really get a real life experience as to what's happening out there. Thanks so much for spending some time with us, Discovery Institute Senior Fellow Robert Marbut. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you very much, and thank you for caring about this issue.
Thank you.